Her brain's fine, her heart's fine, her body is wearing out. And that's a normal, again, nobody gets out of this alive. The third thing is the bargaining phase. You know, if I was just a better person, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe God wouldn't have done this to us. As if it's punishment. It's not punishment. It's never punishment. Just like you can't earn your way to heaven, it's grace, it's given freely. Bad things happen to all people. And guess what? Hate to break it to you. Death happens to everyone. Sometimes sooner than we'd like. And for most people, I don't care how old you are, today would still be sooner than you'd like. And that's a normal reaction. The fourth stage, which she just labeled depression, I like to just call that too sad to do anything. There's a medical term, fancy medical term we use, it's called anhedonia. A-N-H-E-D-O-N-I-A. It actually means lack of pleasure in anything. Pretty descriptive. And to me, that's probably the foremost sign among many others of someone who's truly depressed weeks, months, or years later when they don't enjoy anything they used to enjoy. And that should be a warning sign. And finally, acceptance. I'm at peace with what happened. And not everybody gets to that. So what are some of the, oh, how did it happen? Sorry, that kind of broke off on the slide. That's the denial part. Tell me again how it happened. Oh my goodness. That's a crazy picture, isn't it? I don't know if you can see this other guy. He's halfway down the hill. He's going to live to preach another day. So, first mistake with the stages of Kubler-Ross. Not everybody goes through all these stages. Some people may go through one or two of them. Some people may go through all of them. Some people may go through the third one first, because it doesn't have to be in order, back to denial, jump down to depression, maybe up to anger. You can skip around. There's no particular order. And by the way, the other problem with the Kubler-Ross stages, and she recognized it herself, is people will set their watch by and say, okay, right now you shouldn't be angry anymore. Really? You should be depressed by now. What's wrong with you? Let's move on. Come on, get through your stage in order so I can, put a nice box around it and tie the ribbon. Kubler-Ross actually said near the end of her life, and this was just about 15 years ago, these stages were never meant to tuck messy emotions into neat packages. Never meant to tuck messy emotions into neat packages. And by the way, if you try to be logical and deny your emotions, stop the crying, I'm not going to cry today. What is an emotion versus logic? We can't control how we feel about something. So by definition, emotions are, as Spock would say, illogical. So if you can't be logical about your emotions to begin with, what's the point in trying to deny the reality of how you actually feel? It's a lot healthier to call it what it is, whether it's worry, anxiety, fear. Name the fear, acknowledge it, and then you can start to come up with coping mechanisms that might actually help you function or help your friend function. So never try to be logical about your emotions. So what are the common symptoms of a typical grief reaction? The first thing, as you would guess, is there's no such thing as a typical grief reaction. You can have shock and disbelief. Obviously, profound sadness. Anger. That anger can be at the person himself. Why couldn't I have been better if I was a better husband, a better wife, if I fed him better, if I fed him less? As my wife says. She's a dietitian, by the way, my wife. She calls me her greatest failure. So, that fear too is really tough. Worries, anxiety, helplessness, insecurity, panic. The physical symptoms are almost endless. Insomnia, and it's not just trouble going to sleep. The most typical sleep disturbance we see with a normal grief reaction or clinical depression, if it works out to go that way, is what we call early morning awakening. You might even fall asleep, maybe with a sleeping pill, maybe not, but you wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning, you can't go back to sleep. That's a biologic sign that the body's stressed out and truly sad, truly sad. And then we have to get into the differences between what's a grief reaction versus what we call complicated grief versus a true clinical depression. Clinical depression, yeah, you should probably see the doctor. We'll differentiate that in a little bit. But the good news is most people don't get to that point. In fact, we overreact too often to a normal grief reaction and insist, you have a clinical depression. I'm taking you to the psychiatrist, the hospital, we're taking away the car, the house, and by the way, you're going to end up in the Alzheimer's bin because you keep forgetting your keys. You're just going through a grief reaction. That's where you want to say, thank you kids, go away now. Leave me alone. And it's natural when people are going through this, they will often begin to ask themselves, quietly sometimes, maybe just internally, am I going crazy? Am I losing my mind? It is absolutely normal for the brain not to fire on all cylinders when you're under an acute stressful situation like a grief reaction for a really bad loss. So this is my, I don't know if you can read that to back, this is my grief reaction seeing the doctor. That's the dog, and he says, no, I'm not prescribing medical marijuana. I simply said the next time your stomach's upset, try some grass. So, what are these warning signs that what should be a normal grief reaction is turning south? You know, sadness, like I said, may be lifelong at certain times. Not all the time, but there's times, your anniversary of somebody you were married to for 50 years, you're going to be a little sad that day. Quite frankly, I'd say it's abnormal if you weren't sad on that day. If you didn't miss your deceased relative at Christmas time. If you didn't miss them on their birthday. Something is wrong with you. And that's something we can start to prepare for. Not only ourselves, if it's you we're talking about, but for a friend, for a student, for a family member. What days are going to be bad days for them that you can set on the calendar ahead of time? Maybe that's a day we make an extra effort to go do something with them or just be present, just be around to help. Now, grief, as I mentioned, ocean waves, goes up and down. And ideally, over time, hopefully, as you recover, those bad times aren't as intense and the good times get more frequent and a little better. If everything is straight down and it's a continuous down and you never see an up, you never see a good day, you never see improvement, that's where you need to start looking for really what we call prolonged hopelessness and despair. It's been 6 months and your friend won't leave the house. It's been 9 months and she won't go to church anymore. She doesn't like God. She's still mad at God about her husband passing away. Certainly, any talk of suicide, any talk beyond the first couple days of I wish I would have died with him or instead of him, those are clear warning signs that perhaps we should seek medical attention. And again, prolonged feelings of guilt that go on months and months, that it's somehow your fault. And when we get into the little part about children, that's incredibly important. As adults, back to logic, the logic we use to say, how could anyone of their right mind ever think it could be their fault? That doesn't work with kids. You could have a dad die of a heart attack at 40. I guarantee you their 5-year-old kid somehow thinks it could be his fault, unless someone explicitly tells him it's not and why it's not. Very, very critical when dealing with children with death. So, if someone feels like life isn't worth living, and again, this is beyond the first couple of days, wishes, as I mentioned, they died too, can't stop blaming themselves, feels numb and disconnected. We all do in the beginning, but numb, disconnected, and withdrawn for weeks or months on end, with no up days. It's not a roller coaster. It's a constant down ride. They're in the basement every day. Another clue is a real loss of trust. Trust in God, trust in the church, trust in their family and support systems. It may be normal to have a little bit of that at the beginning, but that should be one of the first things to recover. Because as human beings, we're social creatures. And as we recover from a grief reaction, we are going to start to want to have that type of interaction again. A big clue is daily hygiene and loss of the ability to just perform simple functions of daily life. Go to the store, pick up the laundry. First week or two, no, of course not. They aren't going to want to do anything. But it's 6 months later, and the only thing they have in the fridge is some old rotten milk and a couple of crackers. That may be time to get a little bit of help. And once again, I can't emphasize it enough, constant talk about death, just focusing on death and any talk of suicide. Certainly red flags. So now you're all experts on grief. Just what you wanted to do on a Friday afternoon. So now that you understand what grief really is and how it moves as a process, where do we go from here? How do you really help someone or yourself who's truly grieving? What can you do as a Catholic Christian who wants to love those around you in the best, healthiest way you can, the way God intends? How can you reach out and help someone? This is the part where a lot of our, as I mentioned, social conventions, a lot of our instinctive social responses are just flat out wrong and the worst thing we can do. Helping others through grief, loss, and bereavement, it's often very hard, and I mentioned it's awkward, but it's hard to know what to say. There's your first clue. Most of the time, what you should say is almost nothing. Silence is absolutely fine. What a person needs in the intense times, at the beginning especially, is just your presence. Eye contact, holding a hand, maybe a hug. Words don't even have to be spoken. In a super tragic death of a child, let's say, that's especially true. Worst thing in the world you can do is go up and put your arms around a mother who just lost a 5-year-old and say, "It's going to be okay." No, it's not okay. That's the last thing she wants to hear. If she had a 9mm, she'd probably pull it out and shoot you on sight. You don't want to do that. And you just be present. And of course, what pulls us back again is we're always afraid of being intrusive or saying the wrong thing or making the person feel even worse. Or maybe you feel like there's nothing you can do, but guess what? That plays in to our rationalization of, I'm not going to do anything, I'm not going to go over there, they just need their space right now, right? They just need their space. No, they don't need their space. They just don't need someone with the gift of gab pontificating on all the reasons the person's in a better place and what they should be doing. But they would actually love to just have you sit on the couch with them and say, guess what? Awkward as it is, say perhaps nothing. Absolutely nothing. You can't take the pain away by what you say. You can't take the pain away by what you do. But you can provide comfort and support just by your presence. That's the key. And that goes for children too. You have a kid at school that lost a family member and you're a teacher and they're sitting out on the bench by themselves. They don't need space, but they also don't need a pep talk, especially at the beginning. If they feel like talking, that's fine. Maybe all you need to do is just sit down on the bench and put your hand on theirs. And then you know what? If they start gabbing, we'll get to that. Yeah, talk. But it's at their need, at their time, at their request. Not because you feel awkward with the silence. Whether it's on the couch with an old friend, or a family member, or at school. I always loved this one. I kind of feel like that black lab quite a bit, raised as a guy that's supposed to be tough and macho and not cry and all that, right? And that's probably the best thing you can do. You're kind of nervous. Like, the last talk, Father Nathan was talking about Father Quinn in San Francisco, the introvert, that his sign of peace was kind of like this. Some of us feel that way, but you know what? Physical touch physical touch means an awful lot. So supporting a family, friend, a coworker, a student, please don't let your own discomfort, and call it that for what it is, your own discomfort with the situation, the death, the awkwardness, don't let it stop you from reaching out. Even if you don't know what to say, because that's usually a clue there's nothing to say. Just show up. Just be there. You don't need to have answers or give advice. And by all means, guess what? Don't try. Don't try. Eye contact, that hug, that squeeze of the hand with silence is not only fine, but that's the best thing in the world. And if they want to talk, be a good listener. And it's absolutely normal to feel awkward as heck. And they're going to feel awkward too, but they're going to be grateful that they're not alone. They're not alone. So, they do want to talk, or you're just seeing someone. You're walking through the door. It's just happened. What do you say? I heard that your mom died. Notice I said died. Don't say passed. Don't say left us. Believe it or not, another shocking revelation. You don't want to minimize their loss by candy coating it. Say died. Use the word. I heard that your mom died. I'm so sorry to hear what happened. That's the second bullet. I'm not sure what to say, but I just wanted you to know I care. Simple. And if you think they need support, or if you want to go to this next level and you don't have to right out of the gate, this may come hours or days later, please tell me what I can get for you or what I can do to help right now. And please don't assume you know how someone feels. You have no idea how that person across from you feels. And especially because not only that you're not that person, but people's feelings during a stressful situation like an acute grief reaction will change day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. They may go from denial, anger, to bargaining, and back to denial all in the space of 5 minutes, and not a word was spoken. How do you know what they're feeling? We don't. Never assume you know how that person is feeling at that moment. So here's the never says. This list is, some people get some of these. Others people think, what's wrong with saying that? Well, we'll talk a little bit about that. As I said, I know how you feel. Never say that. I could never know your personal relationship at the depth that it is with your mother. Just because I have a mom too doesn't mean I know how you feel right now. That is so personal and so unique to the individual. It's insulting to say that. It's part of God's plan. That's another pull out the 9mm. I guarantee you they want to shoot you on sight. Don't tell the mother that just lost a child it's part of God's plan. It may be, but that is not something they need or want to hear right now, nor is it something that you know anything about. Last time I checked, you and I aren't part of the Trinity. We're involved, but we're not part of the big three. Only God knows what God's plan is. So don't pretend to know that. My favorite, believe it or not, some people say this, as shocking as it may be, look at all you have to be thankful for. Well, right now I just lost my husband. I'm not thankful for crap. And that's okay at that moment. That will come. Once again, bit patronizing. And that he's in a better place now, that's everybody's favorite. Don't say it. Don't say it. Even if he is in a better place now, do you see how that comes across? Imagine the hurt. Put yourself in the shoes of someone right now who just lost their spouse of 60 years. And you're going to tell me that he's in a better place. If I'm a believer, I intuitively, intellectually, and faith-wise know that already. I don't need you to tell me that. All that's going to do is make me angry and wish you weren't there. And you know what? I may really need your company, but not if that's what your company's going to be. So, when in doubt, be quiet. Be quiet and just listen. The one that comes a few weeks later, a few months later, that's always bad is You need to put this behind you. Time to move on with your life. Really? No. Everybody grieves in a different way and at a different pace. Unless there's a warning sign of suicide or major depression that needs medical intervention, give them their time. Let them grieve as an individual the way they need to. And in fact, that really leads us to the bottom line, which is anything that starts with I know or you should, forget it. Lock that one away. That, to me, after all these years of being involved in these situations, very intimately to very remotely, those are the two things that if you can catch yourself, you're about to say, I know or you should. Don't let the words come out of your mouth. Just be quiet and be a listener. It's kind of a little bit cut off, but that's, I guarantee you, that's what it would be like if you're trying to make contact with the bereaved and you throw out lines like that. Anthropologists decided that this tribe was to remain uncontacted. They may not do it, but that's what they're thinking. So, what can you do? I gave you a lot of what not to do. What should you do? What can we do? Well, it's an overused term today. I think it's underused as far as action, but overused as far as kind of a flippantly thrown out there word. Be compassionate. We need to be compassionate. We need to have compassion. Most people don't even know what compassion means. So let's do a little definition thing here for half a second. Pity is feeling sorry for someone else, but that's it. It's like, oh, poor thing, glad it's not me. I'm glad that didn't happen to me or my family. Woo! Empathy is really being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, really, in your heart, kind of be able to imagine yourself walking in their shoes and really feel for them as if you were experiencing that loss. You can truly imagine at some level how bad they must feel and why. That's true empathy. Compassion is being able to put your heart into their shoes and truly feeling for them, just like empathy, but to the point of being compelled to take some sort of action, to actually do something to help them or help the situation. That's compassion. Compassion really is, simply put, empathy put into action. And I would argue that's what God's love on earth is supposed to be about. To feel for our fellow human beings, whether it's a family member or a stranger or a student or a coworker. To feel for them